Call the meeting to order. This is Rules and Open Government Committee meeting for December 11th, 2013. Any changes to the agenda order? Nope. Then let's take up the December 17th agenda. Anything to talk about on page 1? What time do we want to start the meeting? Do we want to shift things into the morning, make sure we get through?
Mr. Mayor, I just had one question on our closed session, because usually Rick says 9 or 9:30, and obviously there was that newspaper article about there's some development in the MLB case, and is that something we'd want to talk about closed session?
Yeah, I think we can still do a 9:30 start.
Okay.
Yeah, it may not be a bad idea to, we'll leave it at 9:30, but that's an item we'll add.
Well, when we get through with the agenda, we'll talk about if we want to start the open session meeting earlier than 1:30, as we have occasionally done in the past, to make sure we can get through the agenda.
Rather that than midnight.
Yeah, a little earlier start would maybe save us some time on the other end. Anything else on page 1? Page 2 or 3?
Just a note, 2.2A and B, those are the, A is the adoption of the rezoning on Jackson in connection with the rocket ship item, and B is the taxi drop-off fee issue, so those are coming back for final.
Those are both second readings?
Second readings, yeah.
All right.
So is there a matching item for the CUP?
It'll be under the 4s.
Okay.
Anything else on 2 or 3? Page 4 or 5? Page 6 or 7? Page 8 or 9? I think we need a sunshine waiver on item 3.4. Is that correct? That's the agreement with Air Transport IT Services.
That is correct. We do need the 14-day sunshine waiver. The memo did not make it out on Tuesday of last week, but it did get posted on Thursday.
The memo's already up?
Yes.
Anything else on page 8 or 9?
Item 4.3.
That's the North San Jose Traffic Fee Incentive Program. Needs a sunshine waiver on part of it.
The legal document, the resolution has not yet been posted. The memo was released.
Memo's out. When will the resolution and other stuff be?
We're waiting for an attachment to get finalized.
No trouble getting out this week?
No, there won't be.
Yeah, okay. Anything else on 8 or 9? How about 10 or 11? That was the end of the agenda. I have some requests for additions. Commendation to NVIDIA. Councilor Campos traveled to San Diego, and a PAW Project documentary as a city-sponsored event.
Motion to approve the agenda with the additions and the sunshine waiver.
Second.
Motion is approved with the additions and the sunshine waiver.
Oh, you want to talk about time now?
Yeah, so let's talk about time and whether or not we need to shift that. There's a lot of stuff on the agenda. I didn't see anything in there that I think will take 2 hours. There's several things that will take a half an hour, undoubtedly. There's no evening schedule, so I think a 1:30 start time probably still works to get us out of here by 5, 6 at the latest. Isn't too bad.
Start at 1?
No, 1:30 is fine.
Okay.
I think 1:30 is okay.
We're throwing out options, you know.
All right, Mr. Wall, you want to speak on this item?
With reference to 2.7, the second continuation agreement with Berliner Cohen for legal services relating to California Building Industry Association versus the city et al. I think you should really take time out to give kudos to our city attorney for outstanding lawyering. He was able to have the appellate court reverse the case, and so California Building Association are now with the El Supremos. They filed some brief yesterday with the court. But I think you should really start thinking about paying our attorneys more. They're really doing a good job, and you really should thank them for that. On item 4.3, I don't see how a city that's strapped for cash keeps giving away these incentives when, you know, you keep complaining about having to go to the voters in 2016 for a parcel tax or some form of bond to fund traffic improvements throughout the city, and yet, you know, you keep whittling away at the traffic funds for DOT, and I just don't appreciate that. The copper wire issue on 2.21 will come later today, discussion with a nice memo constructed by His Honor Councilmember Liccardo. So I think that that is also timely, and possibly you should just move forward and include his memo with this item. Thank you.
That includes public testimony. We have a motion to approve with the changes and the waivers on that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. It's approved. December 24th, no meeting. In fact, the next meeting is January when? 14th? We have no study sessions to talk about. Legislative update, we have nothing today. Betsy says no. Public record, anything the committee wants to pull for discussion? Mr. Wall, you want to speak?
Sir, with reference to public record item A, council has yet to initiate legislation to compel the city manager to adopt auditor's recommendations. Since I'm in the presence of 3 formidable mayoral candidates, this should be a fairly simple one to address. I mean, we have an outstanding auditor and auditorettes up there, and they do a great job, and every time they come in with a report, you give them thanks. They also get nods of approval from whatever department head they're investigating, and yet the recommendations can either be implemented or just put on a shelf. And then the auditor comes back every 6 months with another big hefty report and says, hey, here are the department heads that are not complying, and it gets put back on the shelf. Meanwhile, there's costs that keep compounding, basically, because the auditor's recommendations are not implemented. So as elected people, especially for the 3 formidable mayoral candidates, I would think that you would want to take steps, long steps, to be reasonable about this. Maybe there's some reasons why the administration can't comply, but at least have these department heads fess up, and also entertain the thought of putting a liquidated damages clause into their employment contracts as a form of an incentive. Thank you.
That concludes public testimony. Is there a motion on the public record?
Second.
Motion is note and file. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. It's approved. Item E1, appointments to boards and commission nominations for a whole bunch of appointments. We have a memorandum on those. Mr. Wall, you want to speak? Nope, not on that one. I'll come to that
No,
in a minute.
not on that.
You're on B. Okay. On F,
I'll
item
make-
A, 180 appointments.
We have a replacement memo that removes the HCDC nominations. Those will be coming back at another time.
So I'll make a motion to waive sunshine and put on the December 17th council agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to waive the sunshine and put these on the December 17th agenda for council approval. Councilmember
I'm
Oliverio?
sorry, is that F1A?
F1A.
F1A.
8 only.
And-
Okay, and reading that's the one to remove the term limits?
No,
No.
No.
The
that's B.
F1B is a waiver of term limits, which we were going to ask to defer to come back with the HCDC
Got it.
appointments.
Okay, thank you.
And my motion included just put it on the consent calendar.
For F1A. Put on the
Yes.
consent calendar. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed. That's approved. So F1B is waiver of term limits for boards and commission appointment for Jackie Hefner. You're recommending we just wait on that?
Yes, we'd like to defer that to come back with the HCDC.
Okay. Okay, the committee defer that. You want to talk about it today?
Nope.
Okay, we'll just defer it to a future Rules Committee meeting, which will be when? What's the next Rules Committee meeting?
January 8th.
January 8th?
January 8th. I don't know if the Attorney's Office and I will be working on it together. I'm not sure if we'll be ready by the 8th. It might
Whatever,
be-
I just
Yeah,
put it, it won't be next week,
correct.
I guess is the key bit of information. FC is Neighborhood Commission appointments.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion
just
is
have a
to
quick
approve.
question.
Councilmember, or, let's see, Councilmember
So-
Constant.
What do we do if we have a district that has a vacancy and the council office doesn't appoint somebody?
That particular council district is doing their own recruitment, so there will be a vacancy until they recruit that person.
So,
The CAAC, though, they meet next week, and we have put in there that they have the ability to appoint in place of the council district.
so,
But there'll still be a vacancy for another month.
so council districts can recruit outside of our normal process?
Yes, and every council district that has asked us, oh, we don't like these applicants, or we have no applicants for our district, can we go out? And we've said, yes, you can go out and do your own recruitment as well. We just ask that they fill out an application, so we have all the proper questions and information.
Yeah, I think that's something we should talk about in the future. I'm not sure we should have multiple recruitment cycles. I think if we're notified of when the recruitment period is, that's the time for council offices to do outreach and go to their community leaders and talk to them about applying through the formal process. I just feel uncomfortable that we start to get to a point where it seems like a council member going out and picking somebody to be their representative, so,
They can do that if they want to.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it just,
Well, I plan to bring this back in the spring, late spring, to go over the things that have worked and have not worked,
Okay.
and things
That
we
might
may
be one
need
of
to
those.
change.
yes.
A question as well.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, so these neighborhood commission appointments or nominations, they don't have a caucus process?
They do. This is in the interim before the caucus, we need to have appointments made. So, and then the caucus process will come, but even though what was approved at council was that the caucuses will make nominations, but those will then come to council. But they haven't had a chance to do the caucus, so this is sort of the temporary
No, I'm
stopgap.
fine, actually, because I think the elected representative from the council district has a pretty good idea of who that person should be, as I voiced my opinion on the council, at least having one, so I'm fine with this. I just want to confirm.
Yeah.
But this is just a, sort of kind of a one-time, apparently.
Yeah, or whenever there's unexpected vacancies, we'll come to the council district.
Oh,
So
okay.
if somebody drops out, because the caucus is expensive and it's
Yes, it is.
time-consuming, you guys will then, or the council districts will have the ability to appoint in the interim.
Yep, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, we need a motion on this.
Yeah.
Motion is to put them on the December 17th agenda. On that
Yes.
motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed. That's what we'll do. Next item is to consider the 2014 legislative guiding principles, priorities, and advocacy issues. These have already been to a couple of committees.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mayor and Council, Betsy Shotwell, Director of Intergovernmental Relations. The guiding principles did go to all four committees for discussion, comments. The legislative priorities are developed based on more specific issues such as grant funds and things of that sort for housing or police, airport. The document will, if it's approved by you and all right, go to council next week so that our lobbyists can act on your direction. I should add, in the federal forecast, it was a little hard to write last week. Pat and Boggs provided some of their thoughts as what might play out with the federal budget. And as you may know, it's in play right now, and the House will be voting on the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2013, possibly tomorrow, and we'll get an update out to the council as to what that means. Definitely, it's not looking like it'll be as severe a sequestration cut as it was initially laid out in 2011. But again, the devil's in the details, but we'll get that information out to you. And staff is here to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Betsy, under the state forecast, We have a list of priorities issues that are listed, starting with the revised the state water bond and down all the way to the environmental quality. Are those just rank in specific orders, or these are just the issues that they're going to take up?
These are
whenever?
issues in the crystal ball that Roxanne has, and she'll be available on Tuesday for any questions as well. These are the issues that we see playing out that were, many of them discussed and debated this past year, and we see in the second year of the two-year session the ongoing discussions and debate over these issues. But no, it's not in a priority order.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Wall, you want to speak?
On item Roman numerals 3, protect and increase local funding, no unfunded mandates. It says oppose legislation, policies, or budgets that would have negative impacts on city services, revenues, or costs, period. Support legislation that aids recovery of city costs stemming from state and federal mandates, period. Here is an issue about the state of California requiring local municipalities to provide affordable housing. Now, this is a mandate. It's an unfunded mandate that has caused now the Supreme Court case that I've just alluded to earlier. So in a way, you're not doing your job because this is an unfunded mandate. If the state says that you're to provide housing and whatever punishment that they'll mete out if you don't, then the state should come up with the funding for this. Otherwise, it's just a magnet to attract people that can't afford to live here in the Bay Area to keep coming here in droves to create an unfunded mandate, which is really an entitlement program of housing. And that's what we're seeing throughout the Bay Area communities through the affordable housing actions throughout the state of California, but more focused here in the Bay Area. And I consider this foundational for an entitlement program, and it's an unfunded mandate. And you're allowing it to occur, and the three formidable mayoral candidates have done nothing on this issue except acquiesce to the state's unfunded mandate. Thank you.
That concludes public testimony. Any further questions for Betsy? We have a motion to approve. This would go on the December 17th council agenda. On that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. It's approved.
Thank you all.
Item G3, restoring lights in our neighborhoods. We have a memorandum from Councilmember Liccardo and Councilmember Herrera, who are not here to speak on it, but staff is here. Councilmember Constant.
Just have a couple questions, and I know staff probably hasn't had much time to work on this, but I know that the joint venture project, which is the Silicon Valley Wireless Initiative, has had a number of conversations with our planning department about a similar issue, and that's different types of street lights and how they would work in a small cell wireless grid in the valley. I'm not very familiar with Prospect SV, but I know it's not the same.
Actually, you're a lot more familiar with
Am I?
that than you think you are.
It's city created, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not familiar. It hasn't been
Oh, yes, it is.
heavily
Yes, it is.
discussed in my committee. I don't know a whole lot about it,
You
but,
just don't recognize the name.
all right.
You
so-
heard of the Environmental Innovation Center? at,
Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We rebranded.
We just never used the name. So, okay.
I know you've heard of that one.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of that. And,
None of it.
and the Chevron project, I just didn't know we changed names. What work have we done with the Silicon Valley wireless project? Does anyone know? 'Cause I'd hate to be going in two different directions.
Councilmember Constant, members of the committee, I'm Hans Larson, Director of Transportation. So one of the item that's in the memo from Councilmember Liccardo and Herrera to the Rules Committee speaks to really an effort to try to accelerate conversion of our streetlights to smart LED streetlights. And so we are actively working on two kind of exciting elements of that. One is with Chevron Energy Solution as part of the ESCO process, which has been to council. There's also a recent proposal from Philips to install smart poles, basically something that looks like a street light that can provide improved wireless communication within our city, but at the same time, as part of the agreement to install those within the city's right-of-way would be a project in which would convert streetlights within zones of the city. So I actually was meeting with Phillips earlier today, and we're working with them sort of under the umbrella of the city's demonstration partnership program to see if there's a project there that we could work on. So I think, you know, it's very much in the formative stages in terms of looking at the ideas, but I think both from staff and from the Phillips team, there's a lot of interest in trying to see if we can make something happen here.
So I get that, but my question was more about what everyone else is doing through joint venture and the Silicon Valley Wireless project, and are we going in a different direction? Because I know I had a discussion with Natasha Ernst about the streetlights themselves and the small grid system, and she had told me that in their conversations with the city, there was some resistance and we didn't seem to be going that way, but this memo seems to be showing us going that way. I just want to make sure that we're not potentially going in one direction and the rest of Silicon Valley is going in another direction. And if there's two efforts happening, they should be happening in concert versus in parallel.
So I'm not that familiar personally with the larger effort, but that's certainly, I think, something that we'd want to explore and understand, particularly as we consider kind of these various different ideas coming together.
So I think that's going to be important to know before we have a council discussion on it, so that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction.
And Mr. Mayor, to Councilmember P. Constance's comments, I believe also the city is awarded or receives funds from locating communication infrastructure on city infrastructure like a light pole. So there's a revenue implication there that I don't fully understand that also is a component here.
Excuse me, Norberto Duenas, City Manager's Office. The administration would certainly appreciate that this item be referred back to us so that we can come back to the committee. There are a number of different initiatives. I think this gives us a good start to be able to do that work, but we would like to come back to the Rules Committee with some additional information so that you can decide how to proceed.
Also, I'd also note that with respect to the proposal to explore certain requirements and particularly reporting requirements and laws, there are state laws in effect, and we issued a memo this morning that outlines what those state laws are and the ability of a local government to add to those state requirements. So, but I think we will work in tandem with the manager's office in response.
I think one of the reasons it's a little confusing is we've got about 4 different things converging. LED streetlight conversion, copper wire theft, our wireless goals, the carrier's wireless goals, the joint venture issue, the other wireless system we're building through the Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability Authority, and they all have the ability to either work together or work against each other. But we also have this item 2.21 that is asking to be pulled, which is, I don't want to mess something up that needs to get done for DOT, but I want to figure out how we get this to where we're coordinating.
Correct, and what we would suggest is that, you have that item 2.21 moves forward on the agenda as noticed, and that we would come back with additional information to Rules on this, that we really keep them separate at this point.
Okay. How long do you think that would take? Because I think this is a really good thing that we need to be doing. I just think we need to be a little more higher elevation look at it first.
I'm looking over to Hans. 30 days, Hans?
I think they're probably, yeah, so I'm not sure sort of who on the city staff has been working with. This was a joint venture Silicon Valley effort on the regional wireless, so we need to kind of see where we're at, how we're gauging that. So probably 30 to 60 days.
Okay, so you and I can get you connected with the right people offline outside the meeting.
Okay.
Well, there are a couple of things. One is the paragraph 1, which we just talked about with the smart poles, which is an interesting opportunity we need to follow up on. I think as a demonstration project, that's probably the quickest way to try to get to an answer using that framework, because if we were to do the traditional RFP, RFI, whatever sequencing on this would take much longer, and we don't really have enough information to begin to make a decision. Certainly don't have enough information to have a council discussion with 4 or 5 things all moving at the same time, so we need to give staff a chance to sort it out and figure out what makes the most sense. But as I understood it, Phillips was potentially interested in doing this at their cost in exchange for the rights to those poles. And that may or may not be something we want to do, but it is a way to get other people to finance things that we want to have done. We've been successful with that in the past. And so it's certainly something to look at. Councilmember Oliverio?
Yeah, I was just going to say that may be, but I think the cost is what would the city lose out on the fee it would normally take into housing that infrastructure. So I think that's got to be for me, this one's very, as I said, that staff needs to kind of ferret out all the levels and details and trade-offs and provide something back.
Well, ultimately, it's a financing mechanism, no different in some respects than selling off or leasing off the parking meters. You get cash up front, somebody takes over the responsibility, but you don't have that cash flow that comes out of the parking meter. So it would be the same thing with the wireless. I don't know how much cash flow we get out of wireless now, but it would be something we would give up in exchange for them doing this up front. So it's something staff needs to work on for sure.
Another question?
Yes.
From what I understand, we passed a policy that allows staff to go do pilot projects on their own. They don't need to have each one approved by the council. They can initiate those things as the conversations are already going with Phillips on their own.
I think so. Let's check with staff and see if they understand it that way.
I mean, I don't think I need to grace every little project that staff wants to do on an information technology basis or, the things that we sort of gave them the bandwidth to go do.
Yep.
And then just the final comment before we move this on is I think it's really important that we coordinate with the Regional Interoperability Authority too, because as they start to build out their network, if they need access to small cells, that's what's going to be the communication systems for our public safety. So we need to make sure as we go forward, we're not tying the hands of our own communications if it's needed, and I'm not sure if it is.
Pete, actually, they will need to put repeaters around the city, and they might actually go on the city infrastructure.
And they have talked about doing a small cell technology type network, which would be, we'd need our street lamps to be able to do something like that if it goes in that direction.
I'm sure Phillips would be happy to lease us space.
Lease it back to us.
Lease it back to us. That's happened in other cities. So that's really the first part of the council memo. The second part has to do with item 2.21. And I don't think it's appropriate for us to take any action on that today. It's really up for the council agenda, but maybe we ought to take it off the consent now and give it a number, since obviously it'll be a discussion item. We can put it someplace else rather than in the consent calendar. And then
So, Mr. Mayor, on the items 2A and 2B in the memo, we have information in terms of what it would take to better secure our streetlight system, so we can provide at council information in terms of that, and we would see that as probably something we'd follow up with in the budget process if we wanted to make that kind of investment. And then also 2B, there is active work on dealing with the issue of how do we retain and hire qualified electricians to do the work that we need for not just our street lighting system, but other electrical needs around the city. And so we can provide at council an update of where we are in that process.
Okay, and as the city attorney noted earlier, they have a memorandum out around the things that we might or might not be able to do either as a city or as a region on additional requirements that are mentioned here.
The state law is pretty comprehensive, just to note. They do have a lot of reporting requirements, and it's supposed to be reported to the chief of police or the police department on a regular basis.
So I'd be curious in knowing if anybody in our police department knows how is this system being gamed. Why, I've looked at the state requirements. They look very comprehensive, extensive. How are people getting around it?
Well, I know it's because of the enforcement bandwidth or lack of enforcement bandwidth. This is something that the police department's been dealing with since way back when I was an officer with the recycling of these types of metals. But it takes a lot of bandwidth on the end of the police department to deal with it. And really, the way the laws are set up, there's not much cost recovery available for us to get out of it.
Okay, well, it's just interesting because there's already extensive state regulation that doesn't seem to be effective.
And what I want to make sure we don't go down the path of is doing like we did with smoking, where we just create another identical set of legislation in our muni code. Fortunately, they contemplated that when they made these rules up at the state level, but I don't want to keep getting to a point where we start duplicate programs of enforcement. So let me
well,
take a stab at
that'll be
a
for
motion.
council discussion, I suppose. All right,
So,
motion.
the motion would be to take item 1 and refer it to the city manager's office for the follow-up as we discussed with Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability Authority, the Silicon Valley Wireless Project through joint venture. Take item number 2 and renumber it into the regular portion of the council agenda for the 17th. And I guess 3 would be to refer it back to the administration and the city attorney to come back with any proposals of what we may be able to do in the future.
On 2B, though, isn't that kind of like, it's really a separate item? It's talking about the classification of electricians, and, I mean, it just doesn't seem relevant to what staff wants, is they want to allocate money from the excise tax to repair these light poles, and it just doesn't seem.
So I guess we could send 2B to the city manager's
Yeah, I'd
office.
appreciate that. The best we could do to keep the 2.21 on its own, and these items referred to staff for additional analysis to come back here, that will give us the necessary time we need to conclude the work.
Or we might just refer the whole memo, and then Han says he's going to provide an update on 2.2A anyway.
Well, the memorandum is written for things for the council to do. If Councilmember Liccardo or Councilmember Herrera wants to make a motion at the meeting, it'll be what we do.
Yeah.
So whether we refer it to the staff or not, on this agenda item 2.21, which will have its own number, they can raise these issues and they can be targeted or decided by the council. But in the meantime, what we would do is ask the staff to be prepared to answer those questions at the meeting and refer it to staff for that reason.
Any question?
If we refer it to staff, it doesn't mean it's not going to get discussed at the council meeting, I guess, is a short version.
So, City Attorney, if we had an item coming to the council that was on parks, could I make a motion that MEF should get a pay raise?
You could ask staff to look into the pay structure and the classifications for certain employees, MEF employees, as you raise, and say that we should look at having negotiations or having conversations with the bargaining unit. But that's a direction to staff to bring back at a future time. So,
Right.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, we did check with Councilmember Liccardo on the timing because we felt that the 17th to come back with that level of analysis would be a little bit difficult. So, he did confirm with us that the 17th is a date that doesn't have to occur on the 17th, that we can bring it back through the Rules Committee.
Well, that's fine. I'm just saying at any given council meeting, council members can ask questions and staff can respond.
Yes.
And we may or may not take action. And what we do here doesn't preclude anybody from asking a question at a council meeting as long as the item's on the agenda. And I don't see that there's any interest in pushing item 2.21 off the agenda to a later date, right?
No.
So we need to do that. Okay, the motion, Mr. Council Member?
Yeah, just refer everything to staff and renumber 2.21.
Okay,
Second.
Thank you.
all right. Mr. Wall, you want to speak on this?
On the electrician issue, you're going to have to pull another reclassification, like you did with the plant operators, plant mechanics. That should solve that issue. I don't know how is it, this looks like crime to me, because we don't see anybody getting electrocuted by stealing these wires out of these street poles. And therefore, how are they this is regional, I mean, this is throughout the state of California that this is happening. This is $500,000 that we have to take out of the DOT budget to replace stolen materials. One thing that I've seen when I was doing the shopping cart entitlement program report, up there at 10th and Horning, I'd see shopping carts come in loaded with copper wire that I knew that these people, it wasn't coming out of their backyards or whatever. And take away the shopping carts. It'll solve a lot of these problems. But you're going to have to come up with some form of legislation in the state that really hurts for people to do this. Something to really designed to punish for deterrence of this type of crime. Other than that, locally, you can get rid of these shopping carts, and you'll see a lot of that. And these recycleries up on 10th at Horning, you know, there's an underground economy that's basically been growing leaps and bounds in this city through scavenging of recyclables on a variety of scales, different materials, that the city's losing money on. But I personally have even seen, I've shown you a photograph of a street pole, a regular street sign, a no parking sign that somebody had picked up and was taken to get money for at the recyclery on 10th at Horning, San Jose Metals. So there's a lot of things you can do. Thank you.
That concludes public testimony on this item. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. That's approved. Open forum is our last item. Mr. Wall?
For today's discussion, we'll turn to baseball. Now, over the weekend, it was let out that the Commissioner of Baseball on June 17th issued a letter to Mr. Wolf saying that he's not going to allow the A's to move to San Jose. And of course, we have the city lawsuit filed, I think, the next day saying, well, you know, you're interfering with our commercial interests. But I wonder if the federal judge would want to know the full story about how the land was purchased in the first place. Well, we know it was purchased using redevelopment agency money, but it was purchased for the purposes of housing. That was the stated purpose, but not the intention of it for housing. This was just a ruse to get around the municipal code regarding a baseball stadium or a sports stadium. Then we look at the amount of money that was spent. I think it was $25.2 million for those properties. Then comes along Mr. Wolf, and he offers to take this land off the city's hand for $7 million with two options that he's already bought into. So the taxpayers are left holding an $18.2 million loss. Now, how can the three formidable mayoral candidates sit there in their glory and allow this to occur? This is not a good deal. And so therefore, we're asking ourselves again, how much more money is going to be, because there's still three properties left, and I don't think AT&T is going to, you know, just be, you know, community spirited and give you the land. So I think the full story should be known to the federal court, because it's not interfering with your commercial interest from the beginning, because the stated purpose was for housing, and you can still build housing there. But no, the intent was all along to skirt the municipal code for a sports stadium. And so I think that that argument alone would just knock the heck out of that premise that's before the court right now, because you had no economic interest when you got the money.
That concludes the open forum, concludes our meeting. We're adjourned.